So good evening. Today we are looking at another project using Microsoft Excel. There is something called exploratory data analysis. So exploratory data analysis is also known as EDA. So if somebody tells you that we want to perform EDA on this project, what they are trying to say is that they want to perform exploratory data analysis. And what that means is that when you want to start the analysis, you don't really have any question in mind. Rather, you just want to check the data inside out and see what the data is saying. I watched a documentary where a professor of statistics said he went to one of the companies and they asked them that why were they not employing statisticians again? The man is an Indian professor of statistics. So he said, the company said they hired a statistician. I think it was an interview. And they told the statistician that, okay, this is our data. What can you tell us? And the statistician said, what do you want to know from the data? And they said, just look at the data and tell us something. So it became like an argument because the statistician was like, if you give me a data, you must have something in mind that we want to check, because that is the traditional way of doing things. You have to research, you look for data to answer some questions based on the research question and go. But in the modern day, due to the huge amounts of data being generated every day, people have come to a level where even though we do not have a question in mind, you can use some of these tools to look into the data and see what the data is saying. So what we were asking the statistician then was like, tell us what the data is saying, even though we ourselves don't have any question in mind. And the professor said, in the past, there was no data, but there were so many questions. So because of that, they had to collect data, do sampling, do things like what do we call it? The questionnaires and co, and all those kind of stuff. But today, we have a whole lot of data being generated every time. So the question is, how can we extract treasure from this data? And that is why EDA is one of those concepts that you must be aware of as someone in the data ecosystem. So this is a data set. Assuming we have not seen this data set before, we are just sent that, okay, let's look at this data and let us know what the data is saying. So this is like a raw data, a data that has not been cleaned, nothing has been done with it. Now, as a data professional, the first question we want to look at is that, okay, this data, what is it even all about? That is the first question we should ask ourselves. And let us look at it together. But before we start looking at it, the first thing, like I said in our first course, is that when you have a data like this, you should keep a copy of it, because spreadsheet particularly can mess things up. So spreadsheet can crash, Excel can crash, Google Sheet can crash if they have a lot of data on them. So for us not to lose our data or start from the beginning again, we need to keep a copy of our data. There are two approaches to that. One, we can just open a new spreadsheet, a new worksheet, and copy the data into it. However, we can actually open a new worksheet. So if we open a new worksheet, a new workbook rather, we can keep our data inside the workbook. So in this session today, I will open a new workbook. So let me do that. So when we open a new workbook, we keep our data inside it so that if there are issues, we can always go back to that one. So you can see now my Excel has just crashed. So it has crashed. That is what happens with Excel. So you can see now it has crashed and we have to open it again. So assuming I have been working on that data and so on and so forth. So that is why oftentimes when you want to work with Excel, you have to keep a copy. So let me open it again. So this was the data we were working with, and then this. So let me close this. Don't save. So let me open another one. So let's copy that. So I will copy it into the new workbook. So let me save this by pressing Ctrl S, and then so let me save it in download. Please let us mute our mic. So I will store it as a copy of data sets. So you can use anything to save it based on, but usually for such project, you should just name it the name of that data set and put a copy in front, like copy of something data set, so that over time, when you are looking for it, it won't be missed. So this is the copy. So I'm going to cancel it. Then I'm back. So this one is still showing here. If I click inside it, it's still showing. So I will press on the escape key. So when you press escape key, you're going to sort everything out. So I can work with this table like this. You can see this banded rows and co. But if I want to remove it, so I can just go to cell style and make it normal. So everything is now normal. So to make life easier for me, I can just increase the font size of this ones here, of the title. So come here, probably increase it to like 22. Or 22 is too much. Let's say 16. And then I will bold it. Good. So, and we are having some overlapping here. Overlapping, so to solve that problem, I will double click here, and that is solved. Good. So another thing I want to do is that I want to freeze my first row. So I can just click on it and come to view, and the view says freeze panes and freeze top row. So now we have frozen the top row. If I go down like this, so you can see that the top row is not moving. So good. So the first thing we want to do before we can start saying we want to look into our data is to clean the data. Like I said before in the first course, that you can't do anything with the raw data until we clean it. And we cannot clean a data successfully if we do not understand what the data is saying. That was why I said in the first course too that when you want to work with any data project or do any data project, you will have to communicate with the stakeholders, because you will need to ask some questions in order to make some decisions. So it is not something that you can just do on your own. So data project is not like, okay, I'm going to my tailor, so just sew me this particular style, and then you go back sometimes probably 4, 5, 6 days a week, and then you get your dress. It doesn't work like that. So you will have to communicate with the stakeholders, and you will see the reason now in this particular project today. So for us to clean our data correctly, we need to understand each column of our data. So the first thing is that these are the columns. So let's start from the first column. This one is saying cost name. So I believe this is customer name, and you can see that the names are merged together. So like Mrs. Linda Garcia. So which means that the first name and the last name are together, and then the title like Mrs., Mr. are put together. Now, another thing, okay, I think let me zoom it. Another thing I want us to see is that, look at this point here. This is Mrs., which stand for a female. And then this is Mr., which stand for a male. But look at here again, you can see master. So master and Mr. are standing for a male, but they are represented differently. So which means that if we are to analyze this data now, we will have to turn this master into Mr. or turn the Mr. into master. So there are several approaches we can apply to that. We can remove all these masters and co. We can remove them from this particular column and put it somewhere else. So we can do that. But before we start doing that, let's even look at the data and see what it looks like in the overall landscape. Now, let's look at address. So this is an address 1. If you look at this address, you can see that this is a trail, this is Drive Avenue. It's not really a complete address. It doesn't really do anything tangible. Apart from probably they want to know the type of address it is. That is this person living in an avenue? Are they living in a trail? Are they living in a street? Are they living in a lane? You understand? Like the type of address. Because this address is not giving a full detail. And this is where we will have to go back to our stakeholder and say, okay, this address inside this particular column is not pointing to a specific location. Rather, it's like it is telling us a type of a location. So, and then we have to speak with them so that they can tell us, oh, we are speaking about type of location and not really a specific location. So, in this project, I will assume that we are speaking that this is a type of location and not really a specific location. So because of that, I will change this particular title to type of address. So let's change it to location type. So let's say location type. So location type. So we can know, we can use this to check where majority of our customers reside. Are they residing in Avenue, Street, Lane, and Co. Let's come to city. City doesn't look bad. We can look at this is the city of the customer. We can look at the states. Okay, these are the states of the customer. But if you look carefully here, you will see that the states have some empty columns, like empty cells. So we means that this particular customer now, we don't know their state. You can see there are empty spaces here. So there are blank, there are blanks in the state column. At this point too, we may have to speak with our stakeholders that, okay, for our state column, some of our customers, we do not record their state. What should we do? Can we get this record and update it? Or we should just analyze our data without looking at the state? Or if we are to look at the state, should we remove all those data sets where there are no states? Because it's very difficult to analyze the data if there are blanks. For example, if you want to say, okay, which state has the highest amount of customers, it's difficult for us to do that from here now with blank spaces. You understand now? So there are ways through which we can handle blanks, usually when we are doing machine learning projects. But for a project like this, we can ask the stakeholder what they want. So because we can just remove the states. So if we remove the states, we will be able to keep all our data. But the issue with that is that we won't be able to make some analysis based, or we won't be able to make some conclusions in respect to the state where our customer comes from. And if our stakeholders are okay with us just ignoring the blanks, so we can also analyze ignoring the blanks. So these are the questions that we have to be asking our stakeholders. Let's move to country code. So this is country code, this is like a shorthand to represent the country. Postal code, the question is, do we need a postal code for this analysis? So if you don't need a postal code, except our stakeholders want us to do some things with the postal code. If you don't need it, I will just remove it. So let's delete it. So postal code +4. So the same thing, let's delete it. But we should only delete after we have spoken with our stakeholders and they agree that they do not want any conclusion or any insight in respect to that. So address 2, there is nothing inside this column. So we should also get back to that there is a particular column that is empty. Is it a mistake, or there are supposed to be some data inside it? If it is that there should be data inside it, then they should update the data. If not, you can just remove it. So in this case, I'm going to remove it. Then this is email address. This one is straightforward. Then we have the credit card type. The credit card type is where we know the type of credit card that our customer use for their transaction. So no big deal. Let's move forward. So our salesman, this is a salesman ID. So this, we are going to keep this because we want to know, we might want to know the best performing salesman and so on and so forth. So we are going to be using this. So let's look at nationality. Nationality is, we have this nationality is for our customer or our salesman because the country code is here and nationality is here. And then this data now so far contains the information of two entities. One, the customers, and then the salesmen. So we have to know who this nationality is pointing to. Is it to the salesman, to the salesman, or to the customers? Another thing I want us to look again is that, look at this one, this row 11. You can see that this country code is US, nationality is US. That makes sense, isn't it? Let's look at 14. Country code is US, nationality is France. So you can see that there is a disparity. Row 15, country code is Australia, and then nationality is Italy. So automatically, this column and this column are not really saying the same thing. They do not agree. So, and that is why we will have to speak up with our stakeholder that this nationality, who is it pointing to? And this country code, who is it pointing to? You see that the country code here is pointing to the customers, and the one here is pointing to the salesmen. And you can see that both of them are written in code. This is in code, this is also in code. So we have to get this done. But based on intuition, I can see that this country code is for the customer, while this nationality is for the salesman. So this is our salesman, and then this is a column telling us where they came from. But that is still an assumption. We have to speak with our stakeholders in order to understand what this is all about. Good. So you can see now how we cannot do a data project without involving stakeholders. And that is why the ability to work in a team, the ability to communicate well is a cardinal feature of a data professional. Good. So let's move on. And you can see now that why data cleaning is like 80 to 90% of the job, because we have spent about 20 minutes now and we have not even completed knowing what our columns stand for. So let's move forward. So let's look at driver license. This is empty. And because it is empty, we may also have to ask them about it. Is it a mistake or they removed it deliberately? Driver's license should not be in this kind of data normally. Why? Because it is a personally identifiable information, PII. We are still going to be talking about that later when we are going to be talking about data privacy and governance. But that is not a story for today. So we are going to, because driver license can be used to trace an individual. So we don't want it to be in a public data like this. So we want it to be secret, and only few people in the company should have access to it. So we are going to delete this. Now we have customer ID. What is customer ID? Customer ID is representing each customer. So which means that If we do not want to refer to a customer by their name, you can just use the customer ID to address them. So the goal is that every customer must have a unique ID. So no two customers must have the same ID, and no two ID must go to the same customer. Why do we need to use customer ID sometimes? Sometimes we may need to use it when we want to do some advanced analytics and we want to join tables together. Another thing is that if we want to send our data out to an external expert and we don't want that external expert to have access to the name of our clients, we might just give all of our customers a particular unique ID, so that by the time the expert does everything they want to do, when we get the insights, assuming they say, okay, who is the customer paying the highest amount of money or making the highest amount of transaction, if they give us the ID, if the expert gives us the ID, we can use that ID to go and check who that customer is in our own database. So this kind of method can be applied in those manner. When we get to Power BI, we are going to be seeing how this type of method is also very important in data modeling and co. Good. Also, we go to order ID. So order ID is to represent each order. So when you look at order ID is representing every, like a unique transaction, so that no two transactions will have the same ID. But a single customer can have many other ID. Why? Because a single customer can have several transactions, and each of those transactions will have their own other ID. So that even though a single customer has so many ID and so many transactions, we can pinpoint each of those transactions based on their unique order ID. So order date, you can see that order date probably represents the date when the customer made the order, but it is empty. So we may want to ask our stakeholder that the order date column is empty. What do you want? Should we delete it or you want to update it? So assuming they say, oh, we want to delete it, so we can delete it. Why? Order date is important because in some analysis, we want to know the difference between the distance between the order date and the delivery date. So assuming our customer ordered a particular product on this day, we may want to create another column that will talk about the delivery date, so that we can know how far or how long it takes for our customers to be getting their orders. We may want to know what has been the maximum time for a customer to get their order and what has been the minimum time. So it depends on what we want to achieve. So we are going to delete these two. And then the order time, you can see now the order time. So this is telling us the time. So you can see that if we have been able to get the order time, we may really not need the order date, because it's like at this point, they have been able to calculate the distance between the order time and delivery time, and they have been able to convert it to this. But if you look at this time, what can you see? It doesn't make sense, isn't it? So it will make sense by the time you format the data. Good. Then we have the freight charges. You can see freight charges. So this should be in currency. So we will have to ask our customer which currency are they using. Is it Naira, dollar? So that we can format this appropriately. So, for example, because a particular company is in Nigeria or in an African country, does not mean that they are doing their transactions in Naira or in their local currency. So they could have been doing their transactions in a foreign currency like dollar or pounds. So we will have to ask that, okay, the flight charges, what currency is it? So that we can format it in that currency. So let us assume that this is in dollar. So because it is in dollar, let us format it to dollar. So I go to home page and then I'm going to use currency. So this is formatted to Naira. I will go to more options like I explained the other time, and I will look at dollar United States, English United States rather, English United States. So, and I want it to be in 2 decimal places, and so I will press OK. So we have been able to format this into dollar. Good. Now this is other salesman. This is also in the form of ID, but we don't know what this is. So we will have to ask them that what does this represent? Because if you remember, we had a salesman ID here. This is salesman ID, and then here again we are having other salesman. So what does this represent? We will have to ask our stakeholders. Very important. Other posted dates, what does it represent? We have to ask. But let's assume that they want us to delete it, so let's delete it. Other ship dates. So the ship date, we may have to ask that too and know what is it all about. However, what is clear here is that this is not in a date format. So we will have to convert this into a date format. How do we do that? So today, so let us use short date. So I'm okay with this format. If you want to change the format, probably the stakeholder says we want another format. Then based on what you did in the last session, you can customize your format. So then the age of our customer. But also you have to be careful here and be sure that this age is representing the customer age and not the salesman age. Very, very important. So, and then other value. So this is like the amount and co, but we will have to ask too that what is this also representing? Assuming they tell us that this is in dollars, so we have to format these two to dollars. So let's come here. Or I'll just go straight here. And then currency, English United States. Press OK, and I have like this. So, and then this particular place, you can see medium, small, medium, small. Assuming we ask them, but there is no column. So, assuming we ask them that, oh, what is this? And they said, oh, it's a mistake. This should be the transaction size. So, we just put it there, transaction size. So, and then we fit it, good. And then we have 2 empty columns. So we may have to call them and say, oh, there are 2 empty columns here. Oh, it is an empty column and not that the data was not sent correctly. Don't just assume that this is just empty. It could have been an error from whosoever was sending the data. So anything that is abnormal, in the data, you should check and be sure that nothing new is happening there. So I just click on the 2 and this one to make it 3 and we delete them. Good. Now, this is T type. We may ask them, what does it mean? But I believe this is transaction type, whether it is complete or it is in progress. We have yes, yes, no, yeah. We don't know what it means. Assuming they say it is a mistake. So we can just delete it. And then this empty one too, let's delete it. But that is after their approval. So purchase touch point, that is probably this representing where the medium that the transaction was processed, probably phone, desktop. So let's move purchase status, occasional, frequent, first time, and so on. And then we look at other type, we see low value, high value. So we have to check this other type here and the transaction type and the transaction size. What is the difference? We have to know the difference and understand what this is saying. And then generation Y, baby bloomers and co. What does this represent? We have to know the meaning. And then from here onward, you can see that everything from this baby food onward are like 000. There are some 1 here, 1 and co. So we have to ask them that, okay, what are these representing? You can see all these are looking like a code. And that is why it is almost impossible to do well with the data without a domain expertise. And that is why being in a domain and having a data skill is an advantage, because you can't solve a problem in a particular domain without having the domain knowledge. Because all of these ones here now, you can see that this one is 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, this is 1. What this is representing now, we do not understand. But people in this domain can tell you what it represents. So, and that is why we have to involve the domain expert to let us know that this one represents something, while this 0 represents something. But based on intuition, it can just be like, when you have 1, it tells you that this particular customer bought diapers. When you have 0, it's telling you that this particular customer bought diapers, he didn't buy any of these. And he also buy wipes. He bought wipes, but he didn't buy any of other ones. You understand now? So let's assume we spoke with our stakeholder and they said, yes, this particular area here is representing our products, baby food, diapers, formula, and co. And anywhere you see 1 represents that is what the customer bought in that particular transaction. So assuming we have a customer, assuming for this customer now, the customer during this particular transaction bought diapers, he also bought a wipe, but he didn't buy fresh fruit, he didn't buy fresh vegetable. So we keep all of this data like this. So at this point, we have been able to understand what our data is saying. So I will press Ctrl S to save my data. Ctrl S. So let's say I want to save it in download, and I want to save it as Excel project. So let's say webinar session. So we have been able to save this data. And that is why when we are working on Excel, please be saving your data intermittently so that if Excel crashes, you won't lose all of your work. So in today's session, we have been able to look at how to start if we are to do an exploratory data analysis. We are going to be continuing this project in the next session, but at this point, I think we have been able to achieve something. That is why it takes time to analyze data, particularly if it is a raw data, because you need to check each of these. If you don't check it, believe me, there are going to be issues. That is why people are being paid a lot of money to do this task, because it's not an easy task. It's something that you have to be meticulous about. You must be meticulous. If you are not meticulous, you won't get the best from that data. But before we go, let's see if we can do one or two things. The next thing is that I want to have an idea of the size of this data. So I want to go down and see. Let me go down and see. So we have 195 rows. Let me look at the extent. So we have a lot of columns, but the rows are not too many. It's just about 195 rows. Good. What is the next thing we want to check? The next thing we want to check in this data is that even though from the first 10 or 5 rows, we are able to detect the presence of this blank. All these places also might have their own blanks, but we are not seeing them, particularly if we have like 10,000, 20,000 rows of data. You can't say you want to visually inspect where there are blanks or not. So what should we do to check for blanks? One of the best ways to check for blanks is to use our filter. So how do we check our filter? There is a way we can check our filter. We can apply our filter in different ways, but I will tell you my own desired method. But let's see, if I click on this and I go to, if I even right click on it, if I right click on it like this, it can give me some option to insert filter, but it's not giving me the option. So let's go to this place. You can see this funnel here, sort and filter. So if you click on it, you see it's showing filter icon. So if I click on this filter icon, you can see that funnel icon, let me show you again, this funnel icon is filter. So when I click on it, you can see that if you check, let me do this, if you check this particular column, you can see this small button here. When you see this small button on any column in Excel or in any spreadsheet, it is telling us that a filter icon has been placed on it. If you check this particular one now, if you check this particular one, there is no filter icon here. Now, so I can use this to filter it. So when I click on this now, you can see that it has shown us the unique member of this particular column. And you can see. So assuming we have a blank, it should have shown us a blank here. So for this particular column, there is no blank. You will understand when I get to a column where there is a blank. So I will press on OK, but I don't like this method because I will have to start doing it one after the other, except I just want to use one. So usually I use another method. If you want to cancel this, you can just click on it. If you click on it and it's not clicking, don't give yourself a headache. Just come to the filter, this place again, where you see this funnel, click on it and see this filter here. Just click on it again. When you click on it, you can see that the filter has been removed. But usually I like to use another method. I will not highlight any column. So I won't highlight any column. What I will just do is that I will just click on the filter icon straight. You can see now, I will click on the filter icon straight. When I do that, you're going to put the filter icon on top of all the rows, on all the columns. You can see all the columns now have their filter icon. With this, I can filter in all ways. So let's take this location type. You see that location type 2 does not have a blank. No blank. You can see no blank. And you can see that you can show us that these are the unique location type that we have. I press OK. I will check for city. So any blanks? No blank. We check for states. You see, state is showing that there are blanks. There are other methods to check for blank, but I like this method because with this now, I can just come up here and unselect. So now I have unselected everything here, so I can select on anything I want. So I can just go down and select on blanks. So this will take me to all of the rows where we have blank for states. So I press OK, and you can see that you can see state now, nothing is here. So all of these rows here, you can see row 7, row 17, row 20, 21, 23, 32, all of these rows have blank. If I look here now, you can see that there are a lot of rows with blank when you come to the state column. So you can see that this gives us an idea of the percentage of our data that has blank at the column, at the state column. So if I want to go back, I can click here and just select all. So when I select all, I can go back all. So this is going to be the best option, and then we are back. So another thing is that assuming all the places where, assuming the stakeholder said, please, all of the data where the state is blank, can you send us those data so that you can be working on the ones where the state is free, but the ones where the state is blank, we are going to be updating you on them. So I can use this method too, and just come down here, unselect here, come down here and click on blanks, and then when I press OK, and I can just copy all of this. So I can copy all of this now and paste in another worksheet and send to them. So with this now, I have been able to take this particular component of the data out without having to do so much wahala. So I can just copy this now, and then, so for example, let me just copy it. So I just put Ctrl-Shift-Enter, Ctrl-Shift, and then press the end. So everything has been copied, Ctrl-C. So let me go to a new sheet, and then Ctrl-V. So you can see now that these are the portion. These are just the portion of the data where there are no states. So good. So we are back here. So press the escape key so that it won't give us so much headache. And then If we want to clear the filter, you can just come to this place and then you can see this clear here. When you click on it, it will clear the filter. So we are back to where we are initially. And you can also just click here. So you can do this for the whole column, and we are going to see where we have blank and where we do not have blank. And we are going to ask our stakeholders to tell us what we should do, whether to remove the state column or to remove the part of the data where the state is blank, or we should just analyze our data ignoring the state. So in this project, we are going to be looking at the data without removing the state column. We are going to be ignoring the blank. So today, we are going to be ending this session here, and the next session, we are going to continue from here where we stop. So thank you very much. Please, if there is a question, you can just unmute your mic and let me know. So let me know if you have a question or something. We are ending this session here.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah.
Yes,
ma'am.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes,
Sir, I observed something. My own spreadsheet, I think the item on top of it is stop at view. Why yours have other developer and other thing?
Yeah, I said this in the first webinar. Probably you have not entered then, or in the first webinar, that we can customize our tabs.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
So this is the tab. So this is a new tab. It won't be on your own spreadsheet, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, I don't have it.
This is developer tab. It won't be on your spreadsheet.
Okay, okay.
You know why? Because each of these I customize them. So that is why if you watch the Excel series on YouTube and you go and watch the last webinar, I explained that our tab can be customized. So so all of these tabs here that you are seeing here, this one is a customized tab. This developer tab is for macros and VBA in Excel, where we actually need to go and do that. So let me show you how it is done now. So we go to File, we have Options. So when you see the options here, you can see Customize Ribbon. You can see this option when you click on it. So you can see now that these are popular commands. These are the main tabs. So in this area here, so you can see that this is my developer tab now. If I uncheck it here and I press OK, so you can see now that developer tab is not here again. Hello, Ma, do you notice? Hello?
Yes, sir, I can see it, sir.
So it's not, so that is what happens. So excellent. That is why all the webinars, you will have to sit down and watch them like once or twice for you to get the best of this program. The program look basic, but believe me, there are a whole lot of information inside them. You won't understand how much information are embedded in all those videos on the YouTube and in this webinar until you actually start practicing. You understand? So that is any other question now?
No, sir. Thank you, sir.
And so I'm going to be sending our project. So next week we are not going to be having webinar. So I will give for that week for all of us to go and check the Excel YouTube series and get as much as we can get, because by upper week, when we start our webinar sessions, I might even make it like 3 times a week, and we are going to be doing a lot of things, and so that you won't be getting lost if you don't know some of those things. So next week I will give for like 2 or 3 projects we should work on during the week, and we'll be submitting those projects. So for this particular course, the Excel course and Power BI course, the reason the qualification and the progress are going to be monitored by our projects. So we send projects out, we do the project, send me the spreadsheet, let me see how you get your job done, and so on and so forth.
Okay, sir.
So my